Hello, everybody. Oh, let me pull up chat really quick. Let me pull up chat. Okay, here we go. Happy daylight savings time, everybody. If you're watching it, that means you actually were one of the few ones that changed their clocks and moved it ahead, losing that hour of sleep. Drink my coffee really quick. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dungeoneers Pack Live. I'm Josh. Thank you guys for tuning in on this Sunday afternoon. Dungeoneers Pack Live is a weekly live stream where I and a guest discuss topics for D&D 5th edition to provide insight and solutions for problems you may have at the table. This week, we're back with part 2 of Tal'Dorei Reborn, looking at the last 4 subclasses that were provided in the book. Joining me back again, round 4, Jordan from Flute Salute. How's it going, man?
Going good. Hi, everybody. Excited to talk about the last few subclasses in the book.
Yep, we have the Cobalt Soul Monk, the Open Sea Paladin, and then it's the Rune Child Sorcerer and the Blood Magic Wizard. And as always, if you guys have any questions, just drop them in the chat. We'll pull them up so you guys can see it on the screen. But we're going to get started because these are pretty dense in content. Also, last week, if you hadn't seen it, you can also just go back and look at the VOD for last week where we covered the first 5, which were the Juggernaut Barbarian, Tragedy Bard, Blood and Moon Clerics, and Blighted Druid subclasses. All right. So Jordan, Cobalt Soul is the first one. Let me pull it up on the screen for everybody to see. But yep, Cobalt Soul was our first one. This one was featured prominently in Campaign 2, the Critical Role. So what were the key features we've seen this? I know this one has gone through changes and it finally made it into print because I don't believe it was on DM's Guild at all. And Matt Mercer released it on the side, which allowed him to release it in this book.
Yeah, I still remember when I heard about the Cobalt Soul being released and the Way of the Open Sea Paladin being released. I still remember I was like changing my oil that day, just like listening to some D&D news. And the Cobalt Soul to me doesn't impress me, especially for a monk. It's an interesting concept where you're an investigator and you learn about things by hitting them, which is something I'm trying to think if there's a reference I have for someone who does that. I think there's some characters in pop culture references where people learn things by touch, but not really like striking them.
Yeah.
I think of the Dead Zone. I forget his name, but the blue swimming guy from Hellboy who touches things and like gets a read on them. Kind of reminds me of those sorts of concepts,
Yeah.
but for a monk is like the general gist of it.
Yeah, and then pretty much like the main feature for this was that's up on the screen for everybody. Extract aspects. So pretty much you can whenever you use your flurry of blows. So that's one thing they did really right with this is like actually having this feature key off of flurry of blows because that's one of your, especially with a monkey, is one of your main key dumps. And off flurry of blows, you pretty much mark them. They say it's analyzed, but you mark them, and then you get to learn all damage vulnerabilities, damage resistances, damage immunities, and condition immunities. And then on top of that, if they were to attack and miss you, you can use your reaction to hit them. So it's only on this specific marked creature. How do you feel about pretty much giving players meta knowledge like this?
It's a little awkward if you just like announce the mechanics, which I think that's basically how Matt Mercer did it, as I recall.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to unload sometimes, so to try to describe each one would be a lot of description tax on the DM. So I'm pretty indifferent to it. I think it's fine to give this kind of knowledge. My problem with it is if you are an experienced player, you might not be surprised that the ghost is immune to being grappled, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you try not to be like meta, but you just can't help it. And so it's kind of underwhelming to me. Sometimes if your DM's like homebrewing a lot of stuff, it could be really interesting. Or if you are newer to the game and you really have no idea, like a lot of new players expect it to be like Pokemon and think, oh, fire is going to be super effective against this. Or, oh, it's a snake, so cold damage will hurt it more because it's cold-blooded, you know?
Yeah.
I've had, those are exact examples I've had new players attempt. and so this is a great tool for them. But overall, pretty underwhelming, especially because vulnerabilities are like almost never
Not
a thing.
yeah, they're pretty much non-existent. And that's I don't know. I think that hurts combat a little bit in fifth edition. That's something I can go into in a whole other discussion about how
Yeah,
vulnerabilities and resistances and immunities. I don't know.
I
I've
spoke
go for it.
I spoke with a few other people in a DM roundtable recently, and Terran Indestructo Boy, he brought up, you know, if in not invulnerability, sorry, vulnerability and resistance and immunity was kind of reworked, then it would open up a lot more game design for the game.
Yeah,
And vulnerability was a big one. Doubling damage is huge, but if you just got like a flat bonus of like +5 or +10 from that instance, or an extra damage die or something like that, that would open a lot more interesting design options. And so if you were to have someone run a Cobalt Soul in your party and you're a DM, I actually recommend throwing in like different kinds of vulnerabilities. Like there's the pure one of like double damage, but start giving some monsters a few like takes +5 damage from fire or something like that. Skeletons, like in the past, used to be better hit with bludgeoning attacks. Maybe that's something you could do. So I think I would only allow someone to play Cobalt Soul and say, "Oh, you're not going to regret this subclass," if I, as the DM, was going to kind of tailor the game a little bit so that it's more fun.
yeah, yeah. And then going off of that data extraction kit that it has, we get Extort Truth, which pretty much gives them a variant of Zone of Truth on a specific target. And then we also get Mystical Uridation. Let me pull this up on the. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that word wrong, but the
Yeah.
Extort Truth
Before
is
we
go for it.
before we move on, there's also the bit with extract aspects. When you analyze a creature and it misses you with an attack, you can use your reaction to attack them. I don't think that's a huge deal, and it tries to synergize a little bit with that later, and it's not a big deal, but I just don't want to miss that detail for people who are unfamiliar with Bow from campaign 2.
Yeah, and I think it competes a little bit with the. Well, not really, because the other one it's the monk where they can deflect a projectile and throw it back at them, and
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of competes in the same space for that because that's kind of really the only reaction the monk has in its kit.
hmm
But that is only it's very narrow because you have to be hit by a projectile that you can grab. So it's not too bad, but it's also not exciting though for a third level feature. And
Yeah.
and then for me, like when I'm looking at any subclass, what is the thing that's going to sell me on this class? And it normally has to be the first feature you get, the first set of features you get when you get your subclass. And this is not
hmm
it. Like I don't having meta knowledge. I'm very lukewarm on meta knowledge. It's one of the things when I'm looking at classes. The battle. I don't want to say battlesmith for some reason, but it's the fighter, the
Oh
battle
yeah.
master
The
fighter.
Battle Master. Yeah.
They also have a similar feature where they can pinpoint a pretty much some sort of stat on a creature. So either
Yeah.
vulnerabilities, resistances, immunities, etc., or armor class. But when you're
Yeah.
trying to roleplay it, it feels very gamey. Like this is a game. These are
Mhm.
gamey features where you're very much this is part of the game and not necessarily something that helps you tell the story.
Mhm.
So we had a situation like this because my brother's playing a battle master fighter, and then he used the feature, and then he's like, "I want to know the armor class." I'm like, "Cool, here's the armor class," and then he realized, "How do I explain what the armor class is in the game to
Yeah.
people?" And then it's features like this. While it's a lot easier to figure out and how to explain like immunities or vulnerabilities or resistances, it's still one of those things where you're mainly playing the game portion of combat and not necessarily helping encourage role play. So, but that's just
Yeah.
my issue at the table. And I know other people are just like, well, it's combat. It's the game. That's it.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. The other one is I forget if it's the Inquisitive or the Mastermind Rogue has a similar feature where they size someone up, but it's more like seeing how smart they are,
Yeah,
which I think is more difficult to role play than the Battle Masters one.
yeah,
'Cause I mean, you can do both, but uh, when you're observing someone, you see like, oh, they never let someone stand behind them and you can see, oh yeah, this person knows how to defend himself, and he's acting coy right now here in the tavern, but I can tell he can hold his own, you know.
Yeah.
So, but like that's a lot of tax on the DM to always play that off.
Yep.
And like you said, this the level 3 ability of extract aspects just doesn't make me want to play the subclass, which most subclasses need something right away to be like, that's the one I want. That sounds fun.
Yeah, and especially compared to other monks like that, this is like a boring gimmick.
Yeah,
Like
I agree.
what's more exciting is like, oh, you want to play somebody that pushes a pressure point and then you just get information, or you want to play the monk that can grow arms, like psychic arms out
Yeah.
of their back and punch everybody that way. Like, oh, I'll take the psychic arm guy.
Yeah, but it gets worse. I
Yeah.
interrupted your level 6 stuff,
Yeah,
so
so
let's
level
get into that.
6. So we're starting to see more of this direction of this data information collector. That's really what this monk's trying to do. Extort truth again, like I said a little while ago. Pretty much you're getting a variant of Zone of Truth. This only targets a specific character. It lasts for 10 minutes, and you can do this off of Flurry of Blows, or you can do this. Actually, no, you just do this off of an attack. You have to spend a key for this, and if you didn't plan to hurt the person, you can still make the attack, but just have the attack do no damage. And then you have Mystical Erudition, which doubles down on this data collecting feature, which is it's really worded horribly. This is like a big old word soup here. Pretty much, you get to pick either Arcana, History, Investigation, Nature, Religion. If you already have it, if you already have proficiency in the one you're picking, you get Expertise. And then at level 11 and level 17, you get to pick another one. And if you just so happen to have it already, you get to just have Expertise on it. There's so much easier way they can clean this up and just say anytime you use an intelligence check, just have advantage or add your wisdom modifier.
Yeah, it's the intelligence expertise monk,
Yeah,
but it has no other incentive to invest in their intelligence. And so it's monks are already mad,
yeah,
right? They
yeah,
want dex, they want a little bit of con, they want wisdom. Now they want intelligence too. And not just for the abilities, but for the flavor of this one. I think point blank, I think it needed to have intelligence instead of wisdom for its monk features. Like that would have made it way more interesting.
yeah. But yeah, my issue with Mystical Erudition, this should have been at level 3.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Waiting till level 6 to dive into pretty much a roleplay feature,
Hmm.
that hurts. And this gives your character a direction and a role in the party outside of combat, because monks really hurt for this. And it's
Yep.
the same thing in their main kit. They don't get, I believe they get their language feature in the mid tier of play too. And it's like, why don't you just bump that up to the front? Because having that opens up, and it actually would pair nicely with this if this was uh up higher too, where you can read everything, you know, pretty much most of the languages, and then you just data collect on top of it, but using your skills and able to read what you're reading. So that
You're like you're like the data entry Excel spreadsheet monk.
yeah, but it's like, man, it fills the role in a party, especially if you're running a party that doesn't have an intelligence based character, so you're not having a wizard or an artificer in your party. This monk would be
Yeah.
able to step in, but they can't do that until level 6. And then Zone of Truth, well, cool, but you probably already have a paladin or a cleric or somebody that can just find another way to get information out of somebody.
Yeah. It, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and
Not
then
exciting.
yeah, it's just monk is just I don't know. This is a big let. That's probably the class or the subclass, excuse me, that I in overall did not like out of this book. Um, so pretty much we've kind of covered a lot, like what kind of role this monk wants to do in and out of combat. There's there's nothing in combat it wants to do that's different. It doesn't push you in anywhere. Out of combat, it wants to make you the information gatherer, like we've been saying, but it doesn't do it in a smooth or clean way that will make you interact with it that another class won't do better.
Yeah. Um we don't have to spend a lot of time on it because like level 11 Mind of Mercury, they can spend a key point to get another reaction per turn, which is pretty cool. But and that's supposed to go with their extract aspects when they've marked a creature, analyzed it, so that when it misses them, they can attack it back. But monks aren't dealing heaps of damage with those attacks, and so just making another attack as a key point is quite a tax to spend on that. And then at level 17, Debilitating Barrage could have been interesting. You spend 3 key points to make someone vulnerable to a type of damage or suspend its resistance for 1 minute. But the way it's worded is really unclear. I don't know if it's like the next instance or every instance for the minute. I don't really know what it is. And the Grave Cleric basically gets this at level 2 and is way more interesting, I think. So
Yeah.
to me, this whole subclass is a wash,
Yeah.
and you could make it work as a DM, but at point blank, not interested.
Yeah. For me, yeah, the same thing. It doesn't accomplish what it wants to do, and I don't really know what it wants to do. So it mixes two ideas of being this person that just wants to collect information, but also mixing the idea of using pressure points, but
Yeah.
not really using pressure points to do anything that normally people associate doing pressure points with. So it would have been much more interesting if they would have leaned that way and said, "This is a pressure point monk," and then whenever it used flare blows, it actually just hits a pressure point and it does some sort of a status effect, and make this more of a supportive monk. I know that would compete with like its stunning strike, but at least it would do something different. Maybe hinder movement, something. Because yeah, this is just not it. I don't recommend it. It also unfortunately does the cardinal sins of monk subclasses that were very, very apparent in early 5th edition. Most of your features use your key to do anything, which unfortunately, as you're seeing with the more recent design of monk, they're moving away from that. They're just having your features kind of ride on top of your monk features, and only with a few big splashy ones actually you can dump your key into it. But other than that, yeah, this one's bad. It's bad. It's
Yeah.
yeah. So we're gonna move on to the next one, Paladin. So OpenSea Paladin. This was another one that got featured prominently in campaign 2 with the character Ford. How are you feeling about this one?
Pretty much the opposite of the Cobalt Soul. I find it very interesting, and like I said, learned about these subclasses when I was just changing my oil one day, and the only thing I remembered before I like read it when I got the Tal'Dorei book was Marine Layer, which was this paladin could create a fog cloud around them and be able to see, and I thought that's basically the usual warlock concept of using darkness plus devil's sight to be able to see. And it comes with the benefit of not being dispelled by bright light, and it says it won't be dispersed by wind like
Mhm.
most fog effects are. And you can give vision to your allies if they're next to you within it. That's very interesting. Some people consider it broken. I don't know if I'd go that far because it's just like a lot of other effects we can already do in the game. But I find it very good. And I like that it gets custom spells too. Freedom of the
Yeah.
Waves, Freedom of the Winds. That's really interesting. And I think I'd like to see more of that in the game, honestly. And then we've got some features that, like, all of them don't make me frown. Like, some of them, the more I thought about them, the more I was like, actually, that's better than I thought. And so I gave this a 5 out of 5. I thought it was really interesting, unique design for the Paladin.
Yeah.
And it's just something very different without needing to reinvent what a Paladin is. It was just top-notch design, in my opinion. What do you think about it?
Me, reading through this because to have like a really good refresher. I read through all these last night. I don't hate it. I think when I'm looking at subclasses, they have to do one of two things for me. They either need to push this class in a different direction, where they open up space for them to play specific roles or new roles in and out of combat, or they need to double down on what the paladin is or what the core class is good at, or at least an aspect of what the core classes do that. Unfortunately for me, this one doesn't do either of those, but it is
Mm,
thematic. Like it's very, very thematic in two ways. Mainly, the first one is like they try to make you like a variant of the Tempest Cleric a little bit. That's how I feel in terms of the theming. And not necessarily Tempest Cleric has some like biblical ties to it too with some of the features that are the spells that it picks up. But this one just very much you're part of the water, you're part of the ocean, you are the storm. So they give you some cool stuff. I really like that they give it Misty Step because paladins do lack movement at times. And
Mhm.
then you get freedom of movement. And then also like Marine Lair is good as another sort of this area effect spell that kind of help your teammates. So like there is some stuff that lets you help your teammates with the paladins good for. And
I wanna take can I take a moment for Marine Layer
yeah,
to
go for it.
explain to people why I think it's so cool? While someone's in that fog, it's heavily obscured, so they're effectively blind, which means you are an unseen attacker, and it says that you see it like it's lightly obscured, so you can see everyone in it and they can't see you. And that means people can't target you with spells from outside of it if they rely on seeing you. So this is almost like spell immunity in some cases. And you get advantage on attacking those who cannot see you. So if you do a ranged attack at someone outside the fog, you have advantage. If it's someone inside it who can't see you, you have advantage. Paladins like to crit, so advantage is really good because then you can do a divine smite. And like I said, your allies can also benefit from this. If your allies all gather around you, they gain all those same benefits because they see it as the light obscurement that you see. So
Yeah,
you can become a cloud turret basically for
yeah.
all your allies, and it can be a good rescue. It can be a good assault weapon, infiltration. It's very useful and impactful and versatile, and that's why I like it so much.
Okay, we got our first question. Thank you, Riker, for coming in. Claire Corner. Actually, he just posted a video today expanding and exploring new or character concepts specifically for Call of the Netherdeep. So go ahead and check out his channel. Let me pull up his question. Uh, Here we go. So his question was: Oath of the Open Sea is the first paladin that expands regular oaths to be more water themed. What other themes might that open up, or themes you would like to see?
From the paladin itself, this one like change its theme, or like what other themes would I like to see for a paladin? Is that
Yeah, it's pretty
the
much what the
question?
question. What does this open up the design for them to, or potentially influence Wizards of the Coast to start designing more thematic, um, not necessarily hard coded by a sense of like a morality that a lot of the paladins are, and maybe just open them
Man,
up to different themes that are maybe like this one. It's more water and storm based.
Man, that's a good point, Riker. And we had a discussion on Riker Cleric Corner's Discord where I voiced my distaste for the ambiguity of the flavor around a paladin and what an oath is and what it takes to be a paladin as opposed to just anyone with some kind of oath or way of life.
Yeah,
So I love this question. I didn't really think about it, but I really hope this would inspire people to expand what a paladin oath is. And I would like to see. I think you could do other things with elements, right?
yeah,
But and I don't have a canned answer because I think this is a very creative based question. But well, also comes to mind like, what if you had something about um, the stars or something like that? That's pretty common lately, like some sort of like space themed paladin or like astral stuff. And like, what else would be good? You could kind of redo some of the other ones, like the Oath of the Ancients, even, which is meant to almost have like this fey flavor to them, and start thinking about it differently. So even if you don't like create new subclasses out of it, I think you can rethink your other paladins if you have a hard time kind of figuring out what an oath is. Why do they have superpowers? They just like who are they beholden to? Do they lose it ever? Maybe look at this uh, Oath of the Open Sea and kind of use that as a rubric to make a more understandable, approachable paladin oath. Whether you're creating a new one or reworking an old one, trying to wrap your head around it. I think that's a great point to bring up that I hadn't thought of with this
yeah.
character concept.
For me, this opens up other potential ideas. It does put them in the realm of the cleric a little bit. I think that was one of the like you could see the very various design aspects of both the paladin and the cleric, where the cleric is going to pick up domains that are off of bigger concepts or like wider. That's why you see it like elemental or just plane based or even just concept based domains for clerics. Paladins is very much the idea of an ideology behind every single one. But I think this like I would like to see a paladin of the sun and what that means, what the ideas of like sun and light actually lead to for a paladin and the tenets that would come with it. Like you said, stars would be a good one. Fitting within still within the constructs of what they try to I think see out of oaths. A paladin that is specifically about exploration and freedom would be pretty interesting. Where they want to explore and see the world, but also not shackle people down by it. I think it would be a nice counterpoint to the crown, where that one is very much the complete opposite. You're trying to you can play it as you're the champion of a a kingdom trying to either protect it, or you can play it as an evil colonizing, paladin that's just going over and just trying to take over everything for your kingdom. I think
Yeah, I also
go for it.
you know what else comes to mind is if anyone watches Demon Slayer, there's the Hashira, which are like the leaders, the swordsmen of the Demon Slayer Corps, and they all kind of have like this theme, like they have a breathing technique, but there's a theme around them, and that would be really cool to make a paladin of love, a paladin of sound, like the sound ninja. Sorry, not ninja. That's Naruto. The sound Hashira, how he's all about like being flashy. So you could do like a paladin oath of the flashiness or something. I don't know. That's a horrible name, but
Yeah, because
um, you could have some fun with it.
yeah, actually that brings up another point because it's like cleric had well, it's not the unity, but it was the most recent one in Tasha's where it pretty much gives you bless as its features. I'm blanking right now.
Sorry, did you say paladin or cleric?
It's the cleric subclass, but I thought like if they actually, I think it fits better with a paladin, and it's the whole.
Yeah.
It would be the whole idea of like of pretty much. Is it unity? I want to say it's unity or I.
In UA, I think it was called Unity, and I think it was even called Love at some point. I think it had
It started
multiple
off as
iterations.
yeah.
Published as Peace.
Okay, peace. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Common Peace.
It was peace. That would I honestly overall concept that probably would have fit better as a paladin. And then
Yeah,
but
that's
I
a great
think
idea.
they have paladin has something similar. I don't know. Paladin wants to hit stuff, so peace might not be the direct direction you want either. So I think redemption is like the closest one to that concept too, though.
Yeah, Paladin Oath of Redemption is a cool one,
Yeah.
and I think you could take that same concept and kind of rework it different
Yeah.
ways to be what you want it to be. But yeah, that's a great question, Riker. There's a lot you could do with it.
Yeah. All right. Getting back to the open sea, what other features do you think stand out with us? So we got the two new spells. We have this aura that pretty much prevents people from being grappled or restrained. And if they're
Yeah,
underwater, they ignore penalties of movement and attacks while underwater, which is pretty cool. Very rare. It's going to be very niche. Like there's only a certain set of campaigns that are really going to use this.
at level 3, it has an alternative use for its channel divinity in addition to the Marine layer, and it's Fury of the Tides. As a bonus action, you make your attacks once per turn for 1 minute, push a target 10 feet. So it's like you're like summoning waves to go with your blows and push an enemy back. And it suffers bludgeoning damage equal to your charisma modifier if it hits something. So if you knock them into something,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool, it can take more damage. And I think that's pretty cool. There's some times where it'll be better to empower your attacks with forced movement instead of putting it into your marine layer. And so I think that's another great option. The aura you brought up, at first I was like, boring, because it's just makes you not be able to grapple or be grappled or be restrained, and it makes it easy to get out of those things if you like move up to an ally who is grappled or restrained.
Yeah.
But when I started thinking about it, I think it actually might be better than I thought, because a lot of monsters, as you start leveling up, the bigger monsters, often part of their attacks is that they grapple you as well, or they restrain you, like in their jaws or in their tentacles. Like, if we're talking about the ocean, maybe like, giant octopus or something grappling your friends. Vampires, like, they rely on attacking you, and as part of the attack, they grapple you, and then they can start biting you. And that's when they start healing themselves and
Yeah,
really start tearing into you, and that's pretty bad. So this is actually a great anti-vampire aura.
yeah,
Funny enough. So Way of the Open Sea would be great in a Curse of Strahd campaign. But and then it also says it removes underwater penalties to movement and attacks. And if you don't remember, there's only certain weapons that if you don't have a swim speed that can be used underwater without disadvantage, and ranged weapons become really limited. And so removing those penalties could actually be really huge for any sort of party who ends up in water and doesn't have a swim speed. So it didn't wow me at first, especially because I usually have really high expectations for this aura that
yeah.
the Paladin subclasses get at level 7. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this is probably one of those like not very flashy, impressive, make you want to play it aura.
Yeah.
But I think it's good.
But
It's just not
yeah, it's one of those.
tempting.
I feel the same way about this one. It looks very boring. You're just like, oh, cool, grappled restrain. Creatures are not going to grapple unless the DM really makes it, but the restrain is going to come up a lot with spells, etc. Like there, certain attacks, especially you already said, like earlier level or later levels, like creatures naturally are just going to start grappling you and restraining you. But I
Yeah,
wasn't
it also
sold.
makes it
Yeah, go for it.
so. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Okay. So another thing is the common concept of knocking someone prone and then grappling them so they can't get up because their speed is 0 and it takes half your speed
Hmm.
to get up. Um, this makes it so people can't use it on you. So it also, in addition to other things, of it feeds into the freedom theme of like you cannot be
Yeah,
locked down. You are like the waves. You're free. Which I like that it still feeds into the theme,
yeah.
which is not something I felt with the Cobalt Soul.
Oh yeah. And the water uh movement and pretty much getting rid of any underwater penalties might not always come up, but if you're in enough like a watery terrain area, this opens up areas of combat that might not have been accessible to begin with. Like you might have wanted to avoid it, but now you don't have to. And then playing in that
Mhm.
three-dimensional space, like your character as a paladin, and say you're teaming up with a rogue, you guys are sneaking underwater now, and going to attack creatures from under, which opens up instead of the usual we're gonna fly and death from above stuff, like your death from below. So it's just it opens up an interesting space that isn't normally seen and often forgotten. Normally, when water's involved, um, everybody kind of avoids it because they're just like, "Oh, well, there goes my swim speed. I don't have anything." And this says, "Nope, we can play with this space now too," which I think is cool. It just takes some players to really capitalize and really think about that.
Mhm.
And then okay, and then yep, my buddy, what's going on, Mondo? He comes in and says it's like Ring of Movement. Yes. Yeah, yeah. It does act like a ring of movement spell. Kind of really reminded me of a freedom of movement spell also, and they get this on their spell list too.
Yeah.
The only thing I think thematically was off or was a little too late was its capstone, the mythic swashbuckler. This finally makes you feel like a pirate, but it does it so late. Like,
Yeah.
I honestly would have felt like it should didn't even have to make you feel like a pirate. I think there's enough stuff you get in the toolkit um, that you could have already done to do these things. Maybe they should have just added an extra fighting style. There was the or I think it was the Mariner fighting style. I don't know if it was
Yeah.
still in UA.
And UA.
Yeah, that they could have just said, okay, well, if you're playing this paladin, you just take some of those things from the beginning, or
Yeah.
we're just going to add this into this thing, and it's on the paladins list. Um, it's on theme, but also kind of just like cool, but should have some of this stuff could have been earlier, but I think this is just the problem I have with paladins uh scaffolding their level progression features, that you don't really get anything active that you can actually use until level 15. Everything else is kind of just like there. Spells are spells, but your paladins are going to be smiting majority of the time, so you won't necessarily use your spells all the time. You have to play
At
that.
least your allies can cast web on you without worrying about you because
That's
of your
true.
aura.
Yeah. And the aura, you're just standing there. So I'm definitely gonna get into a paladin discussion. I need to bring on Eric. He and I have very similar idea gripes with the paladin.
Yeah. Um, One thing about its level 15 feature, Stormy Waters,
Mhm.
basically as a reaction, when someone approaches you or leaves to like make an opportunity attack from you, you can use your reaction like an opportunity attack and do 1d12 bludgeoning, but it's not an attack, so you can't divine smite,
Yeah.
and they must succeed on a strength save or be knocked prone.
Yeah.
I think that's cool, but a lot of paladins, especially by level 15, often will be picking up things like Sentinel and Polearm Master, who already will utilize their reaction. So I don't know. This feature, it's good that it comes later. If this was like the front feature to make it cool, it would be pretty poor. Well, maybe at lower levels, not as poor because you don't necessarily have all those feat combinations yet.
Yeah.
If you want those feat combinations, but if you also if you don't want those feat combinations, this is a good way to utilize your reaction that a paladin normally can't do. So I'm kind of like in the middle about it. Like it enables a different play style that you don't have to go for certain feats, but it's not as effective as those feats.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that way. But yeah, overall, its late stuff is pretty late. Like you said,
Yeah.
paladins get a lot of cool things too late,
Yeah.
and they suffer for that reason. But a lot of people still like them, so it's an interesting thing. Maybe that's why paladins often end up feeling the same when
Yeah.
you see people role play them and play them. Is they don't have a lot differentiating them. Most people just want to divine smite and be heavily armored and get their aura for saving throws.
Yeah. And that's only the unfortunate thing about paladins, because on paper, I will say this, people can clip it too. On paper, this should be a class that checks every box. It's a party face. It's a melee combatant. It also has magic, and it's also a team player. So for me, it's like, oh, sweet. This should be the class built for me. And after playing one for a small amount of time, it's probably one of the most boring classes I've played. Is
Mm.
Yeah, for me, the waiting game of, if I'm going to crit, do I smite, or should I use my smite now when I need to? And then just always feeling like you have to reserve your spell points, or your spell slots for smite, or maybe use it for a spell slot. That contention just wasn't fun for me. And then not having any other active features on top of that until you hit 15th level, it was just like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, Channel Divinity is not going to work. You're not going to use it too often, maybe once, depending on your subclass. Once a session, if at. So overall, though, so we don't lose time on some of the other ones, because I know Rune
Paladin
Child.
rant.
Yeah, we're getting the Paladin rant, but the Rune Child, and we still got to get to the Blood Magic Wizard. Those are really, really interesting. Do you like this subclass?
I do. I really like the way of the open sea. Um, I think it's very interesting. It's useful, and it opens up paladins in a way that um, they normally were a little bit more limited in what they do.
Yeah. I'm in the boat of, it's okay. Thematically, it opens up the Paladins. Third Corner brought this up with his question. It does some cool stuff, but my big gripes, it doesn't double down on anything that the core Paladin toolkit wants you to do, and for me, it doesn't open up in a new role play space that you normally do with the Paladin. I think conceptually it does that, where you're going to be more of this Paladin of, like, pretty much a pirate, or any sort of mariner, which is cool, but that isn't necessarily a role you want to play, right? Of In terms of, like, the game itself, it's what kind of role you're going to play in the party, because it doesn't make you a better party face. It doesn't do what the Cobalt Soul Monk wanted to do, would make you the data information person. It doesn't make you better at travel, which I would have loved to see that, some sort of feature that lets you be great at navigation to some extent. That would be really, really fun. Um, I I think the big thing is, like, I want you to feel free, so the movement, not being locked out by movement, is like its big thing. But it's going to be really dependent on what kind of maneuvers your DM uses with its monsters to really take advantage of that and make you feel powerful with it, compared to other
Mhm.
paladin subclasses, where most of them are, I make you hit really, really hard, or I'm doing some sort of effect that's coming up. Either I'm imposing or removing, that comes up a lot with a lot of other features. Um, Wolfsbane has a question, flavor wise, for a pirate theme. Which is the better subclass, Way of the Open Sea or Swashbuckler?
I would say Way of the Open Sea.
For a pirate, I will say Swashbuckler for pirate. For Mariner, overall, like Mariner thing, I would say OpenSea. Swashbuckler feels more like a pirate, and since it does dip into your charisma stuff and you can use your rogue skills to kind of play party face with it, you don't have that magic sense that you normally would. You would normally it's not associated with pirates unless you're doing like actual Pirates of the Caribbean kind of stuff. Then Swashbuckler is a good duelist kind of subclass too, if you want to play it, like flavor it that way too. Way the Open Sea though, like you want to just play any sort of mariner, any sort of person that's out on the ocean, whether it's a pirate, they're part of the former military, they're any sort of thing like that. I think that one's better that way. Yeah, I think Swashbuckler just does get locked down in the pirate theme, while Open Sea is like you can just do more ocean stuff. And even then, like you play a Triton or a Water Genasi as an Open Sea, like, it fits better. All right. Claire Corner says, would it be cooler if the Oath of the Open Sea did cold damage on its smites? I'm okay with bludgeoning. Actually, I would have loved to see thunder, or a little more than bludgeoning, because Open Sea also opens you up to the Tempest themes of being part of the storm, and we actually see that with a couple of the spells that it picks up. Let me see, with Freedom of the Winds and then Freedom of the Waves. Those are very much on theme of like you're a part of the storm. Freedom of the Waves puts a 15-foot radius, 10-foot tall cylinder on a point that pretty much you turn it into a whirlpool or this big tidal wave. You turn it into some big old natural disaster, and people get bludgeoning damage and they fall prone if they fail the strength saving throw. And then you could teleport within the space too, which is cool. You're kind of just riding the wave, you're surfing on it. And then Freedom of the Winds. Let's see. You gain a flying speed of 60 feet. Additionally, you have advantage on ability checks to avoid being grappled and on saving throws against being restrained or paralyzed. Paralyzed is actually a huge buff on this one, but it's also level 5, so you're getting this pretty much late game. When you are targeted by a spell or attack while the spell's effect, you can use your reaction to teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space. So this pretty much again doubles down on the movement theme of these subclass. So yeah, I think I wouldn't like to see cold. I would actually like to see like more winter-based subclasses in general for all classes. That would have been sweet. But I would have actually liked to see thunder, maybe thunder at least alongside bludgeoning.
Yeah, it's interesting because the subclass is really about water and movement, like you said. So like cold would make sense. That's an easy reflavor. Pretty easy change, Maybe even a nerf, because radiant and necrotic are less resisted than cold.
Yeah.
But you could also do lightning. There's a lot of things you could do, and I don't think it would harm the subclass by any means. It's cool.
Yeah. All right. And in your opinion, Jordan, does this accomplish what the subclass is trying to do? Does the kit inspire you to actually want to play this, or allow players to really dive into that character fantasy?
I speak from myself. It makes me want to play this subclass, and I'm actually gearing up to do a streamed short campaign with another YouTuber, and it's gonna be fair, like at least partially nautical, sea based on the coast. So this was on my list, but I think I'm gonna go with something a little weirder. But absolutely, this makes me want to play it. I'd probably pick a lineage that gets me like swim speed or something, or maybe I wouldn't, because if I was gonna start at like a later level and I'd already have that level 7 aura, there's different ways to go about it. But for me, it's something that it makes me want to play it. And when new subclasses come out, maybe 1 in 5 I find interesting enough that I want to play it. A lot of them I think are cool or whatever, but like to spend time playing it, maybe 1 in 5 do that, and this one does that for me.
Yeah. I personally just don't really care for paladins in general, and that's just from personal experience of playing it. But I see the appeal of this. This is a class that accomplishes the theme. I don't necessarily think it accomplishes like new expanding roles or really doubles down on anything the paladin wants to do, but it is one of these ones that you look at it and you're like, oh, it's doing things, and it's thematic to playing a certain sort of character idea. So I think that's if that's the goal that what is wanting to do, it accomplishes it for me. Like it's like okay, like you're a paladin that lives out in the ocean. That's pretty sweet. Rune Child, ooh, Rune Child. So this one's gone. This is like the new iteration of the class or the subclass, excuse me. The original version of it was rough. So Tal'Dorei Reborn is pretty much an updated soft reprint of the Tal'Dorei setting book that was released by Green Ronin. Rune Child was on there. Rune Child, the name itself brings up a lot of different ideas. Thematically, from what the description says, it's pretty much a wild magic sorcerer without the wild stuff. Your character is innately magic, and they're trying to control it, and the way that they can control it is through the use of symbology, symbols, runes, and sigils. So, for you, Jordan, what were the defining features of this class or this subclass?
It's definitely the runic magic, or not. Sorry, that's the name of their spell list. But
Mhm.
the what's it? The essence runes.
Yeah.
So they have runes on their bodies, and when they use sorcery points, they light them up. They become active. I don't know what the subclass looked like before, but I'll just say right now, I really like this design, and I haven't analyzed it in depth yet, but I think it is as strong as like a Clockwork Soul Sorcerer, which really like revamped the strength of sorcerers. I think this follows that same kind of design, and it makes you makes a sorcerer look really tempting. And I love that it plays into the sorcery points more than a lot of in a fun way. Most of them just say like if you use your sorcery points, you can do this, kind of like a monk. Like if you use your key points, you can do this. But this is a whole new mechanic for when you use your sorcery points. You light up your runes, and those can be used for additional things. It makes the resource management really interesting for a player because you think, do I want to use a sorcery point because it'll be a good boost to my spell right now? Or do I just want to get another active essence rune, so that I can do another one of my abilities? And I think that's really interesting design, and I would be eager to play this kind of sorcerer.
I'm in the complete opposite boat. Yeah, I'm in the complete opposite boat. So my big issue with the Essence Rune system, so it's a lot better than what it was in the Tal'Dorei Reborn photo. I remember it, but it still has the same issue. So what Essence Rune system does, it puts a system that is on the back of a system that's on the back of another system. So if you're gonna play
Okay.
this subclass, you're already this is not like a user friendly or like a new player friendly subclass whatsoever. You at level 1, not only do you have to learn how to use spellcasting. So in franchise player, that's easy. Okay, cool. Spellcasting's out of the way. But a new player, no. 2, then you get into the second level. Obviously, you start getting your sorcery, font, and magic points, and then you still have to now learn the sorcery point section the of the of the sorcerer. Okay, so now you got to manage points for that on top of your managing your spell slots. And then, mind you, this comes in at level 1. You don't get your sorcery points to level 2. So you're not actually using this feature until you hit level 2. And then you're adding another system that uses a feature that you don't get until a level later, that now you have to manage a whole nother system on top of like your two other systems you're managing. There's so much it could have been such more seamless. I like the general idea what they want to do. I just don't know having players track this many things is is easy for them. And like it's a cool idea. Like you charge up these ruins as you're using your magic, or at least using your sorcery points, and then you get to do other effects on them. Well, compared to other sorcerer classes, they don't necessarily add a whole system on top of it. They just let you do it, right? You compared it to the Clockwork Soul Sorcerer. It just says you just do this thing. There's no other system. You already have these two other systems you're playing with, and then you just get to do extra cool stuff with your subclass. So yeah, and that's my biggest gripe. Like, the big thing is like, yeah, you get this thing at level 1, but you don't get to actually start using it until level 2 when you get sorcery points. So it's like, okay, so I don't get to do my cool thing until the next level, which is going to be frustrating. I think that's why they were okay with doing the expanded spell list. Let me pull that up. Which is, and none of these spells are really that bad. They're very very supportive, so that's the angle they want you to play at. Uh,
Hmm.
and then and then you get Glyph of Aegis, which would be cool because it's a very nice defensive spell, a defensive feature. But again, you're not using sorcery points to level 2, so you can't actually use it. So you have 2 dead features at level 1, which
Hmm.
might not be an issue just because you survive your first adventure. You should hit level 2 depending on XP. But that for me, it's like, oh man, like this could just, if it didn't rely on sorcery points and just was its own thing, or relied on casting spells, I think that would ease it up because it's already limited by the amount of, pretty much you have as many runes as you have levels. So level 1 you're only getting 1, level 2 you're getting
Yes.
2. So just having it piggyback off of your spells would actually be pretty sweet. But
Yeah, I think an easier fix they should have done was just say when you finish a long rest, you start with like one charged rune or something like
mhm,
that, so that you could at least do something.
yeah,
So level one doesn't usually last a long time for me, so um, for me, I don't really sweat it.
yeah,
But you're right, it is a weird design choice for sure. But once you get into the runic magic, I like it when sorcerer subclasses receive their own spell list and that
yeah,
they can swap those out. And the cardinal sin of the Clockwork Soul Sorcerer, I think, is that it allows you to swap to Abjuration Warlock spells, which gives you Armor of Agathis,
yeah,
which uh, Warlocks are a little special because they only get up to the 5th level spell slots and not very many. So if they use Armor of Agathis, that's different. But you can swap to that the same way as the Clockwork Soul Sorcerer with this subclass, and so that's, to me, that's I don't know if they really considered that in their design choices when 5e and now Critical Role started allowing that.
mhm,
And a lot of these spells are definitely going to be swapped out
yeah,
because they're just not as like Long Strider. I find uses for that, but when you're a sorcerer and you need more spells, you're going
yeah,
to swap that one out,
yeah,
like almost guaranteed.
yeah. Yeah, it definitely wants like a more supportive role. But I didn't even catch that. You can abjuration or transmutation spells for sorcerer, warlock, or wizard spell. I didn't even catch that little line right there. So this opens you up a
That's a huge
lot.
deal.
Yeah, like this is such a strong feature. Like just that little byline right there, being able to pick off of pretty much 2 other spell casting classes list, even if it's only 2 other schools of magic, that's still um opens you up to a lot of different spells, and it's still generally going to be more supportive stuff, or at least crowd control stuff, but still getting access to more spells. That's why the Divine Soul Sorcerer tends to be one of the more favorite subclasses for the sorcerer amongst the community because, well, you have the access to the full cleric spell list. So
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, that's my big gripe with these. It's like, man, you don't actually get to use 3 or 2 of your 3 level 1 features until level 2. And if they just would have piggybacked it off of spell casting, which would have been way more seamless, I think, and still fit within theme because you're casting magic and drawing on that magic to charge your spells. I think it avoids feel bad at level 1. That's really what it is. All the other sorcerers get
Uh-huh.
to do all their cool stuff at level 1, and you're like, well, I got extra spells.
Yeah, at the same time, like some of them don't actually get that much at level one
Mm,
anyway. So I'm not too hurting from that. And then you brought up that it kind of adds another system on another one. That's fair.
mm,
So for everyone's reference, I am someone who likes encumbrance and tracking ammo. So I don't mind like making more decisions based on my sorcery points. So if you're like me, you'll probably want to check this one out to see if you want to use the design in your own game or like refunction it for some other purpose.
yeah,
But if you think sorcery points and spellcasting are confusing already, this might make your eyes cross.
yeah. Because for me, it's the big thing I'm looking is like the accessibility of it. Is this really easy to get into? And adding another system on top of like 2 other systems. and especially looking at from a new player standpoint, this is like knowing the game enough. This would be something I'd be cautious of doing and wanting to put on another player. I think it's safer, especially since it's defensive mechanics. It's definitely safer, and you want to play a wizard, or excuse me, a sorcerer that's just magical, but don't want the randomness of wild magic, which is cool. But at the same time, at least wild magic sorcerer, all its features kind of just trigger off of you just casting magic. And that's really my big thing. Is like if they just changed it to that, that would make it easier, so you can actually use it from the get go and somehow track it differently, or just let you
Yeah.
kind of do the thing. All
So
right.
let's start getting into what you can do with the charged
Yeah.
runes, and I'll start explaining why I like it. So already as a sorcerer, I already want to use sorcery points because that's what like makes me a sorcerer, as opposed to like why didn't I just play a wizard?
Mhm.
So I'm already wanting to use them. And so for those who don't know, basically you have a number of runes on your body based on your sorcerer level. So if you're level 5 sorcerer, you have 5 of them. You can charge them so they become lit up when you use sorcery points, and there's a few other mechanics with that. And then you can use those charged ones to activate certain abilities. So the one that you can't use at level 1 because you don't have sorcery points yet, like Josh said, is
Yeah.
Glyph of Aegis, which I compared this to the Clockwork Soul Sorcerer because it has a mechanic where you give someone a bunch of, I think, D6s
Mhm.
to reduce incoming damage. This one it depends on your charged runes, but you can keep using it as long as you have charged runes. So as you level up, you're going to have more D6s that you could potentially use, and you can use your reaction to put that protection onto another character. And so at level 1, well, level 2 really, when you get sorcery points, you have this mechanic to turn your charged runes into damage reduction, is like what we're starting off with.
Yeah. Yeah. And
At
then
level 6,
that's when
we
you can
get
put on your allies at level 6. But you have
yeah,
to.
yes, at level 6 you can do allies. So it's kind of like the Abjuration Wizard with
Yeah.
its ward, similar concept. And then also the D6s become D8s at 14th level, so it has a little bit of scaling to it.
Yeah. And I like this feature. It's not something new. We've seen this a lot with a lot of
Yeah,
subclasses. The one that is very similar to that I remember off the top of my head is the Rune Knight. They have a rune that does something very similar, and these actually kind of go hand in hand. So if you want to play like two pairs of characters, one's a Rune Knight, and then you're a Rune Child Sorcerer. Maybe you're both kind of like descendants from giants and stuff like that, and you're using the same sort of glyphs and runes. Maybe your runes on this character are actually tattoos that light up whenever you start casting your magic. That'd be pretty sweet. Um,
here's some a little bit of context to why I really like this. So as a Rune Child Sorcerer, we mentioned that you can get Armor of Agathis. You can upcast it. Let's say you're level 3. You could cast it with a second level spell slot, so you get 10 temporary hit points. Anything that hits you is going to take 10 cold damage, and then that lasts as long as you have the temporary hit points. So even if you get hit with an attack that reduces you to like you have 2 more temporary hit points left, the next hit still does 10 damage. If I'm remembering right. Now I have like a slight doubt in my mind, but I think it's the whatever the maximum was that when you first cast Armor of Agathis. I'm gonna bother to look that up because I want to know. But basically, if you're reducing damage on top of temporary hit points using your, um, gosh, what's the feature called?
the
The Glyph
glyphs
of
of
Aegis,
yes,
then you can perpetuate how long those temporary hit points
yeah,
last, so that you can keep dealing that cold damage to anyone attacking you. So you really can punish someone with very little payoff if they rush you and get past your frontliners, try to take you out. That's one thing I really like. And also, if you don't take any damage, let's say you rolled enough to reduce the damage to 0, you don't have to make a concentration saving throw to see if you maintain concentration because you didn't take any damage,
yeah,
for example.
yeah. Like yeah, the glyphs are really really good, and especially you start stacking it with armor agathis, and yeah, it's for every spell slot you cast higher than the first level, it's an additional 5 temp HP and additional 5 damage. So
Yeah.
casting at level 2, you'll anytime they hit you, they're taking 10 cold damage back,
Mhm.
and 15, and so on and so on. So extending
Yeah.
those is actually really, really good. Another way you can
Yeah.
spend it is Sigil of Augmentation.
Level
Wh-
6?
yeah, at level 6. The static one you can always use your charged ones on will be Whenever you make an ability check that uses strength, dexterity, or constitution, there's no constitution or ability check for constitution.
Yeah, without DM Fiat,
Yeah,
you're not gonna have that one.
yeah. But acrobatics, stealth, etc. for dexterity, and strength, it's athletics. So
Yeah, so you can use a reaction and use your charged rune to get advantage on strength and dex checks, like grappling, for athletics or
yeah,
acrobatics or stealth, those sorts of things.
I don't know
But
if you're gonna.
the second part to that, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if you're gonna be using those too often as a sorcerer though.
Yeah, so it's really the second part that's interesting,
Yeah,
and this one you have to use a charged rune like the first part, but this one you can only do once per long rest. So you can do the dex and strength ability checks all you want, um, which keep in mind that includes initiative.
yeah,
You can gain a bonus to your initiative or advantage on initiative rolls with that check.
yeah,
And so then the second part is strength, dex, or constitution saving throws. You can use your reaction to use a charge rune and get advantage on that saving throw once per long rest. So if you have a really important constitution saving throw to maintain concentration, which you're a spellcaster, you're probably concentrating on something to get the most effect of what you do. That can be a good ace in the hole if you take a lot of damage and you're really worried about maintaining your concentration. So you can get advantage on an initiative check, and you can safeguard your concentration. And keep in mind that your first level glyph of Aegis, I always forget what it's called. I think that's it. You can reduce incoming damage. So it's a really good way to be bolstering what you want to do as a sorcerer to maintain your concentration. If you throw in other feats and stuff, it gets even better.
yep. And then I believe, let's see, I'm trying to think. Other features that spend your points. Runic Torrent at level 14, you could spend 2 charge ruins, and your spells, you pretty much change the damage type of your spell to force damage, which is really, really good. And all creatures that are targeted by the spell or within the spell's area must succeed on a strength saving throw. And if they fail, they're either knocked prone or pushed up to 15 feet away. So this is really, really good. It pretty much changes it to one of the most unresisted damage types in the game. That's why Magic Missile is probably like my favorite and go-to damage spell early on. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but it's auto and it will never really be resisted at all. And then knocking enemies prone is probably like you fireball, change it to force damage, fireball everybody, and your enemies are not prone. All your melee allies can just rush up, and now they have advantage in all their attacks. Like,
Yeah, super cool.
yeah,
Once per short rest or long rest, and it takes 2 uh, charged runes to activate it. But man, is it cool and useful to knock enemies around. Like you said, Fireball becomes Force Ball,
force ball.
and it just knocks everyone down or knocks them away and does more reliable damage. I think that's really cool.
Reaver had a question. Been saving it.
Sure.
Wanted to get to it. Again, thank you for subbing and watching the videos. Thank you. I have a question. How would you flavor a Rune Child Sorcerer acquiring the ruins? So this is a flavor option. Flavor question. Do you have some ideas? I have like a couple.
So I think I missed part of the question. Who's dealing with ruins? Is that
Yeah.
what it was?
How would you
Like
flavor
runes?
a Rune Child Sorcerer acquiring their runes?
Oh, acquiring runes. Okay. Um, you could do it based on their diet. Maybe they seek certain foods that awaken more runes in their biology. Maybe it's like Skyrim where you're the Dragonborn and you find the runes in ancient ruins that have something to do with your lineage or the the reason you have magic and you acquire those runes. You could have it be that you find certain points, almost like a monk, of like pressure points where you can exploit, and maybe you bring them to life by using like special tattoo ink or something like that as you enrich your body with magical energy and you develop as a sorcerer. I think those are the first ones that came to my mind. What do you think, Josh?
Me, tattoos are probably like the coolest thing. Like I would lean into that. Either if they're cultural, so you can play into like Goliaths naturally have tattoos on their body. So having sort of these cultural tattoos that go back to sort of their lineage, and maybe your characters, the Goliath is tied to a certain aspect of certain things in magic, and these are not just magical tattoos, but they're familial. That goes back to your
Yeah,
lineage, and then maybe certain points as you're casting it, they light up. and it's like retracing your family history. So like you can trace certain spells and certain effects back to certain members. So it's like they're always tied to you. Um, Other thing would be like you were saying, like these sort of pressure points. Maybe these tattoos you have on your body that you're kind of learning these glyphs. They're tying you to different planes of magic. So it's the like your connection to the weave, and then depending on which spells and stuff you're casting, will pull. Actually, it's pulling energy from a specific plane, which would help open up some stuff for your DM later. Be like, oh, your plane's hopping now. Well, your rune child is like, well, this is the map to uh, Avernus. This is the map
Ooh,
to Celestia. They take you to different planes. That'd be pretty sweet.
that's very water world, like a
Yeah.
tattoo map on your back
Yeah.
to the last bit of land. I also thought, what if there's scars? Like,
Oh yeah.
aren't you in battle? Your body contains all this magical energy, and when you get scars, it starts to get like a stitch has popped sort of thing, and it's being released. Because at level 18, Arcane Exemplar is one of your abilities, and it says you become like a being of pure magical energy. So you can almost picture like your body is just like a shell for like some kind of magical energy inside, and when you get a rune, a glyph, it's like leaking out, like your skin's gone. And so that's one way to think of it, is like your pure magical energy inside of you is becoming stronger. Maybe as you level up, you're kind of losing yourself. You're becoming something entirely different. You're just becoming a magical being, as your biology actually like, gives way to the magic inside of you as you gain like 20 runes at level 20 and you use this arcane exemplar. There's a lot of ways you could go about it. Maybe you also make it, it's Tal'Dorei, so why not? Maybe it's some kind of blood magic,
Yeah.
because maybe you create the marks on yourself, like we were saying. Maybe they're not tattoos. Maybe you are familiar with runes and you're using your body that is compatible with them for some reason to release the magical energy. And I also, one point in the lore for this that I really liked is that the Rune Child Sorcerer is really rare because people want to experiment on them and try to utilize them. So it's like your body is like a battery, of magical energy, and people want to utilize and experiment on you. So that can also inform your character choices, but it can also think of how you flavor it. And maybe you were a creation of magical science. Maybe you were not born a rune child. Maybe it was put in you, like in the Boruto series where they try to find someone compatible for that seal mark. I forget what it's called right now, but and most people die from it, but maybe you survived and then you escaped somehow. And I'm excited now because I really like the question and it got me thinking. And there's a lot you could do with it that could be really fun.
It reminds me of Eberron, specifically like
The
the
dragon
war.
mark,
Yeah, the
or
dragon marks, but also the Warforged. This would be pretty sweet on.
oh
So
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Warforge, they haven't really depicted them lately with them, but there's a
The,
magical mark that's on their forehead,
yeah,
and this could be pretty much your ruin. And you're an arcane battery. You're a unit that was created, and a probably very rare unit that was created to be an arcane battery, maybe to use in combat. And now that since the war is over and you're not really part of a wizard military unit, kind of off as a mercenary, so it's you trying to kind of cope with this, and then pretty much the Dragon Mark houses and other people are hunting you because they want to use you as an arcane battery. So
yeah.
yeah, I think you could still play this idea too if you want to play something that's not robotic or robot looking. In Ebron, I want to say, I think it's the mark of handling. They mage bred special animals. So maybe you're part of a unit, or a special secret. Pretty much, you're a super soldier. That they were doing experiments and making mage bred humanoids, and this is the result of it. Like there's these special markings on you. That'd be pretty sweet.
I
Uh,
also think of Ravnica, the
yeah.
Simic hybrid,
Hmm.
where that's what they do, right? They're trying to like make super people
Hmm.
using animal features, and
Yep.
maybe this is something they did too.
Yep. Yep. Okay. So obviously you like the subclass.
I
Um.
do.
You do. Does it accomplish what
Um,
what it should be doing?
I thought it was going to be horrible. I thought the concept behind it, I was like, I don't think I'm going to like this one. But I read it a second time and I thought, wait a second, I think I really like this. I like the concept. I like the abilities. And we didn't go over all of them quite
Mhm.
yet. One of them basically gives you like an arcane trap detection and rune
Mhm.
detection, kind of like a detect magic. It's
Yeah.
it's like a level 6. It's like the lesser feature.
Yeah.
And then Runic Torrent, we already went over that one. Arcane Templar, the whole thing when you become like pure magical energy is like you have flying speed 60 feet. Enemies have disadvantage on saving throws against your sorcerer spells. You have resistance to damage dealt by spells. When you cast a spell at first level or higher, you regain hit points. So I like all of these features, and I started when I started piecing together what spells I might be using and what I want to accomplish. I love this subclass, and if I were to play a sorcerer, if someone said, Jordan, let's do a game today. I want you to be a sorcerer. What are you going to be? I'd say, can I be this Rune Child from Tal'Dorei Reborn? That's how much I like it. I would want to be this.
As an enfranchised player, I know I can handle the system on top of system on top of system. For new players, I don't know. This is the good, like a good
Not a good
starter.
starter.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good starter. You do need to understand how the game works on the magic side of at least understanding how spellcasting and get a good handling on sorcerer points to really use this and want to use this a lot. But what's
To
going
be
on,
fair, I
Eric?
don't know. To be fair, I might steer new players away from sorcerer in general
Yeah,
because I think that they'll be disappointed with their options and they'll be disappointed that sorcery points maybe weren't as cool or didn't work in the way that they thought.
yeah,
So, to be fair,
yeah. Thematically, I'm kind of torn because like having a non-random, I'm innately just magic and tied to magical things is cool. Because wild magic isn't necessarily fun for everybody because of the randomness of it. But I'm not sure if sorcerer is the best chassis for the idea. You normally when you're dealing with ruins and like actually writing stuff down and having it as be either words of power or you're pretty much infusing. This sounds very artificer. Like this,
mm,
yeah. Like if they were to put rune child and just take the child part off and just like this is a rune based artificer that is inscribing ruins onto items and stuff or words of power. I think this would be a stronger chassis for it, especially you just put it into the infusion mechanic. Just put it on top of it, and it's pretty much very, very similar. Or this hashtag not sponsored. There's the Rune Keeper from Terran and
yeah,
Destructo
I was
Boy,
about to say,
who what's his whole class is based on runes. So
yeah.
definitely check that out on DM's Guild. I think you're gonna find better options to do this. Or the Rune Knight Fighter handles runes a lot more seamlessly. It's just a lot stronger. You're tied to giants. Um, but it's another way to kind of get the feeling of this without necessarily if you don't want to manage another system on top of what you already have to manage. I think there are other options out there for you that will do it better. It's not like the other version. Your previous version was it was a lot rougher. This newer update streamlines it a little bit more, so it's a lot easier to manage. But it's still for me, you're putting a system on top of your regular systems and then not getting to use your features until level 2. I think those are things. Level 1, level 2 gap is not that big, but when you're pretty much just a standard spellcaster at that point until at least you hit the level 2. So it's
Mhm.
just things to keep in mind. This is not a new player friendly subclass whatsoever. But we do have one more class to get to that I believe is actually new player friendly. The Blood Magic Wizard. So how are you feeling about this one?
Josh, I think we're just like opposites
Yeah.
today, except for the Cobalt Soul.
Yeah.
I do not like this wizard. I don't. But I think you like it, right? I watched your build for it. I know it was requested by your
Yeah.
audience.
I think it's okay. I'm not over the moon
Oh,
for
okay.
it. Yeah, this is like these last few subclasses out of this book. They're not really, in general. For the whole book, I'm not really a fan of like most of these, and it's mainly because a lot of them don't. They stick to the thematics or attempt to stick to the thematics, but they don't push the classes in a new direction, or they don't actually really double down on what you want to do with the class to begin with.
Mhm.
The This one's the I'm gonna be thematic, but it sticks to the thematic so much that it's actually detrimental to the wizard's survivability. So we're gonna get into that right now. What are the defining features for you in this subclass?
Defining feature would be, man, blood. I don't know. It's a and I don't mind that theme. I think it's cool. I think it's cooler than I used to. Um, Mostly because of Cleric Corner doing some videos about blood magic that got me excited to like rethink it. But the yeah, to me, this is how I felt when I first read the Death Cleric, and I had Shard come on and we did a video, and he changed my mind and showed me what you could do with it, and there was some fun to be had. It feels something similar here, where it feels like I don't know what this is trying to do in like the big picture.
Yeah.
It's got damage rerolling if you're willing to take some damage, which damage rerolling isn't actually a great way to boost your damage output.
Yeah.
When you look at averages, Bond of Mutual Suffering, and so this is a reaction where like someone attacks you and they take damage based on what you took. To me, I'd rather just be an enchantment wizard, my favorite wizard, and just make them attack their friend instead of attacking me. You know what I mean? So it's like it's different, and I like that. But also the enchantment wizard can use it unlimited times. This
Yeah.
Bond of Mutual Suffering is once per short or long rest, and then it's 2 at level 14. Again, I like the theme. I thought it was cool how they made it blood channeling, where if you're below your hit point maximum, your body becomes an arcane focus. But most of the time, you're not hurting for like, where's my arcane focus? Where's my arcane
Yeah.
focus? The way that it reduces the cost of components is cool.
But it
So
comes
to
at a
me,
big
this is
price.
it is a big price.
Yeah.
So, but here's what I do like. Here's what I do like. You could use this to use spells like Glyph of Warding way more often, and you're not in combat, and maybe this is actually a downtime activity where you don't mind taking a bit of damage.
Yeah.
So I like that. But it does. So I would basically, if you're using this, I would get Glyph of Warding, and I would flavor it as you like creating blood sigils on the ground as like a trap or something. Or maybe you spend a lot more time making spell scrolls. I don't know. So, but I don't know if that was intended though. It's just
Yeah.
like me trying to get value out of this. How would I use it? And I think it would be in some way like that, because wizards actually don't rely that much on component costs that aren't reusable. Like when you get Force Cage, 7th level spell, that one doesn't expend the components. You get to use it over and over again. But some spells like Glyph of Warding, it does. And so to me, this is the Glyph of Warding wizard, if
Yeah.
anything.
And it really depends on how you play the game at the table, right? Because if
Yeah.
you're tracking like spell components and stuff like that, then this one might come up if you haven't told your DM, oh, we need to go to have a shopping uh session to go buy spell components, you know.
hmm
But for like
I
my
think that
table, we don't really track any of that. You just cast your magic. There's an assumption in our table like you just have this stuff. So
is that even with things like Glyph of Warding, where it's like there's like a gold cost associated and you lose the resource? Would you just kind of say, whatever, you can do it?
yeah, it pretty much, yeah. But at my
Okay.
table, that's what it is. Like we played, I call it superpowered a bit because it's just like there's just an assumption you have this spell components. Don't worry about it. Your
Okay.
arrows, don't worry about it. You just an assumption you have it. Um,
All right. So yeah, if I was playing with you, there's no way I'd play this subclass
yeah,
because like it loses all the value, right?
mhm,
Um,
yeah,
but at low levels, basically blood channeling is your engine to do like chromatic orb
yeah,
that actually has a pretty high cost if you don't have that like special diamond or whatever it
yeah,
is. And so maybe you're using your blood to make an orb and
yeah.
make it an element, that sort of thing. But I kind of went on a rant
Yeah.
that went beyond your question, so I'll
No,
let you
no,
rein me back in.
it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, looking at the rest of the features, but pretty much the big core theme that's going on with this one, it's the same that you see with the Blood Hunter, and then you see with the Blood Cleric. You're pretty much taking damage to do cool, like to try to do cool stuff. Except the stuff you're trying to do isn't necessarily that cool.
Yeah.
And
Well put.
yeah, and the thing is, with something like the Wizard, you don't have a lot of hit points to begin with to really be thrown around. You're running off a D6. Unlike a Cleric who's a D8, and the same thing with a Blood Hunter who's a D8, you can take actually, I think Blood Hunter might be a D10. Um, you can't really take a lot of damage to do this stuff you want to do.
You're a wizard.
You're a wizard, yeah. And even
Yeah.
then, none of these features really point you in a direction of what you want to do as a wizard either. So same with burst, yeah, you want to be a damage wizard, okay. Bond of mutual suffering, if you get hit, which you shouldn't be getting hit to begin with because you're a
Yeah,
wizard.
you don't want to get hit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you need to be sitting in the back line, and then if they are hitting you, okay, cool, but that's probably not going to be a good thing that you are getting hit to begin with. Glyph of Hemorrhaging is another one that we pretty much doing a warlock thing of putting a hex on somebody, and they get an extra d6 necrotic damage whenever they get hit by an attack by anybody, which is nice, but nothing like,
It-
oh, this is
yeah.
super cool at level 10.
There's a case for that, right? Where
Yeah.
you invest in charisma and not really your intelligence, and you multi-class as a warlock, but you like level up as a wizard, and then Glyph of Hemorrhaging, you can hex plus Glyph of Hemorrhaging. Is that worth it? I'd probably
Probably not.
not, but
Probably not. Yeah.
something.
Just Hexblade Warlock 1 level, get all the hexes, and then get this curse.
Yeah.
And then Thicker Than
Thicker Than
Water.
Water is cool.
Let's see. Empower with Arcane Vigor. Whenever a spell or magical effect causes you to regain hit points, you regain an additional number of hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. In addition, while you're concentrating on a spell, you have resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical attacks.
So you get healed a little bit more
Yeah.
from spells, which you don't have a lot of spells. So if you have if you're using Vampiric Touch, you could have some fun with that because you heal more. But I think it's more cool. It reminds me of the War Magic Wizard.
Yeah.
How when they concentrate, they get some bonuses. It's like you picture them concentrating, and the magical energy around them is like protecting them. Thicker Than Water is when you're concentrating, you resist the basic bludgeoning, slashing, piercing from non-magical attacks. But why is it only non-magical attacks?
Yeah, especially
This
at
is a
level 14.
level 14 feature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bogus.
Yeah, this is level 14. This feature comes on too late.
Yeah.
Way too late for the amount of damage you're taking with everything else. If they got rid of Bond of Mutual Suffering and just move that up there, I think this is fine. When this comes online in average campaign, so you're playing any Wizards of the Coast campaign, you're getting this towards the end game.
Yeah.
Which it won't matter.
I would.
Like, it won't matter.
You mentioned moving up the abilities. I think I would take everything it gets, move it up in how soon it gets it, and then give it a new like level 14 ability that is.
Oh yeah.
Like just give it something new.
Yeah. In general, what I'm finding with this one, it really just lacks a direction. You get again, heavily thematic of you're using blood to do stuff, but it's not really your blood stuff isn't really doing anything fun with your spells. So a lot of the wizard subclasses, they interact with your spell list in a way either you get to copy that specific school or a lot quicker and learn spells of that specific school quicker, or they manipulate your spells in a way that are fun. So like Abjuration Wizard, you get that war whenever you cast an Abjuration spell. This doesn't do anything of that sort. You became an arcane focus, and if you're at under your hit point maximum, or you can take damage to, ignore spell components, and then Sanguine Burst, take damage for yourself so you can reroll damage.
You're like you said, it's a wizard.
Yeah.
You have very few hit points compared to other classes. You're usually concentrating on something to get the most bang for your buck, and dealing damage to yourself while you're concentrating on something just risks your concentration.
Yeah.
So it's not only is it not doing enough cool stuff with the damage it takes, like you said, it's actually hurting whatever cool stuff it's trying to do.
Yeah.
It's bad. You're just gonna end up like Molly in campaign 2.
Yeah.
Critical Role.
Yeah. I think in terms of blood theme stuff, if you're wanting to play you don't want to play Blood Hunter, but you want to play into this theme of like the Blood Hunter cleric orders thing, you're better off doing it with the cleric, because at least you get some cool stuff like blood puppets and getting information extraction and stuff like that. You're not getting it with here. You're gonna be really, really stuck as a wizard and kind of not really get too many useful things that help you as a wizard.
Yep.
So yeah, I think for both of us, this one's like a bummer. Like I purposely did and that's what actually was up this week. I did a build for it I'm not saying to not play stuff if I think it sucks. Play whatever the hell you want if it's going
Yeah,
to be fun for you. I will continue to choose options and play and direct you guys to play favorable stuff, even if optimizers or the general D&D community says it's bad, because ultimately it doesn't really matter as long as you're having fun at the table. But at the same time, I do want to point out issues you will have with certain features, and this class is just not going to have you feel empowered. And if you're a type of player that wants to feel empowered as you're playing, because that's part of the fun, don't. I would say avoid this one. You're not. Its direction is kind of all over the place and just doesn't enhance the wizard.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. So that is the last one. So overall, you've been with me with all of these. And the last two, we specifically looked at the subclasses. Your overall feelings for these subclasses.
My overall feeling is some of them just need more work. Others, I think they're really great. I was very impressed overall based on my expectations because I've seen Critical Role content be either completely trash or completely overpowered. Um, you know, that what does that term even mean? Just completely complicated and very strong
Yeah.
compared to what other. And so I went into this thinking I was, especially because I saw people talking about this current book, like
Yeah.
there was a bunch of things wrong with it, and not really. I don't think there's anything crazy here that's like gonna give me a headache to try. Like every time someone brings up the Echo Knight,
Yeah.
I just get a headache.
Yeah.
Not because I don't understand it, but I just don't want to try to navigate that. And it hurts. But
Yeah.
these, no, I liked all of these. Well, I didn't like all of them, but I liked the design at least of all of them, and that they didn't overstep anywhere, in my opinion. A few places I think they could have gone a little bit further, like you said, like
Mhm.
they could have leaned into what they were trying to do a little bit more. But for unofficial 5e content, I was very pleased with this because I usually find unofficial content is often very hit or miss.
Yeah.
And so having a collection of what is it, like 10 subclasses in here that none of them made me say this is too much or anything, like, impressed.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there.
Um, in general, the subclasses I felt were okay, or under. I think for a lot of the same reasons. They're very thematic, which is
Yes.
cool. Comparative to what Wizards of the Coast puts out, and even some of our friends at other channels and other designers that are putting out, they kind of are hit under it. I think they were playing too safe because of how much criticism they normally get whenever they put these feature or they Matt Mercer's put this stuff out
Maybe
there.
it's mhm.
Oath of the Open Sea was considered too powerful. Way of the Cobalt Soul was criticized not only for its thematics but also just because of its initial mechanics as well. Uh, Rune Child heavily changed to be more streamlined because it was super criticized. And then yeah, and the rest of these in general, it seems like they took that criticism a little too hard. And but also they don't push any of these classes in a newer direction or double down on too much of what they're trying to do. I think there's going to be some exceptions. I think Path of the Juggernaut Barbarian is probably an exception. You sold me on this one. It does play with some sort of control space.
Mhm.
Um, but Bard College of Tragedy, cool thematically, but again, um, you're not getting to do too much of what you want to do with the subclass features on that one. Blood Domain was always thematically cool, and you get to make a blood puppet. So there's like no change. This is probably like one of the more standout fan favorite ones from the initial release. Moon Domain, I think now is going to be compared to the new Moon um, sorcerer subclass from
UA.
the new UA for Dragonlance, and
Mhm.
I think that Moon Sorcerer does a better job of hitting the themes of what it means to be part of the moon, especially with the phases of the moon, while compared to this cleric where it's dealing more with Critical Role's moon system.
Mhm.
Circle the Blighted Druid, probably my favorite one thematically, but I think it suffers the same like with all of them. doesn't really nail down your specific role and direction you want as a druid. You just kind of get a bunch of buffs for everything. But the big thing at the end that you guys pointed out, you and Winter Wyvern pointed out, that it does want to become some sort of like mass summoner at the end. And I really wish they would have just put that up front, because at least we know the direction of what you want to do with the class instead of getting in the late game. Yeah,
Mhm.
and then the rest of them we just went over today. Just it's pretty much like the most negative I've been about a lot of stuff. But I think the big selling point for Tal'Dorei Reborn isn't necessarily going to be the subclasses. I think if you're a fan of Critical Role and really want to play in the setting, and especially you're picking up Call of the Netherdeep, and you already have the Wildmount book.
Mhm.
This book is specifically, you want the lore. This is a really, really good lore book. It reminds me of exploring Eberron.
It's well written.
Yeah, the lore is where it's at. It expands the world for you. You get to have the other continent, while Wildmount explores one continent, you get the other one, and it updates the lore to be more up to date with campaign 1. So you kind of see what happens after campaign 1, and it kind of rounds out the setting, so you kind of get to play with all the major themes. And that would be the reason why I would pick up this book. Subclasses play as a player. If you're not playing in any of these, you guys can just skip this 100%. You're not really missing out on too much. Um, yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about this book. It's lore wise, it's great. You pick up every little nugget of information. Fans of Critical Role, they dive deep just to like fan reactions of over like where the campaign 1 characters were at. You're gonna get a lot of that information here. What do you think overall for Tal'Dorei Reborn?
I made a review of it. Um, I really like it. I Of all the setting books I've gotten, which I don't get a lot of them, the Eberron one was my favorite, but now Tal'Dorei Reborn is my favorite. It's just very digestible. It's really easy to just open up and learn something new or get inspiration for whatever I want to homebrew in another world or my own world.
Yeah.
The subclasses, I think I have a better view of them than what you expressed.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, they're skippable, but I I think some of them are great, and the themes they explore are new, and I think they add to the game. The critical role stuff, if you're into that, there's some fun things in the book for you as well. Whether you're researching lore to make your own theories or you just want to learn, you can definitely play in this setting. If you're a DM, you will get some plot hooks. You will get ideas that have like level suggestions and those sorts of things. And there's just it's easy to open it up and pop something into your game, and that's what I like in a setting book. And the fact that it's digestible and I don't have to do too much reading, and it's really easy to open it up and kind of see what I'm looking at and see if I want to read more. I haven't always gotten that from other books, so I think it's a great book. I highly recommend it. I did have someone comment on that though. They bought it from their local Game Store. You don't get the PDF if you do that. If you buy it on Critical Role's website, you do get a PDF download, up to 3 of them. And I really like having PDFs. And so if that's important to you, keep that in mind.
Yep, because you're probably going to be paying a little bit more of a premium at a local game store so that they can make a little profit off of it.
Hmm.
And you won't get the PDF, and you pay the same price on their site, and you get the PDF for free. So
But if you have a friend who does buy it online, just you can get the PDF from them.
yep,
So if you want to support your game store and you know someone that can get you the PDF, great.
yep. All right, yeah, that does it. That's all of them. You can go back to last week's Dungeoneers Pack Live to get the other 5 subclasses. Thank you again, Jordan, for joining me on these 2. Next week, we're going to be starting our dive into the Blood Hunter. I believe we're going to do design. I don't know who I'm going to have join me there. I don't know if I'm running it solo. I'll figure that out. And then the following weekend, we're going into flavor ideas for the Blood Hunter. So we're going to wrap up this whole month of Netherdeep, Tal'Dorei, Critical Role stuff in 2 weeks. Next week, or actually this week, there's a Blood Mage character build that you can go check it out, taking the themes and turning it into a doctor for a wizard. So you can go check that one out. I have that up on the site. And next week, Blood Hunter character build finally, because people have asked about that one. So I will have that one out next week. And Jordan, what do you got going on?
I eventually want to get around to doing what Wintry Wyvern's doing and doing my own like review and overview of all the subclasses like we did on these videos. So it
Mhm.
was good to kind of hash out my thoughts. So feel free to go subscribe if you want to get my thoughts later. But if you watch this, maybe you don't need to. um, and what else do I have going on? I've been doing a few DM roundtables, so expect a few discussions like this to be coming out on my channel. My wife and I are still trying to figure out like what we're prioritizing in our videos that we want to be doing, and if we want to start doing more stuff like collaborative. It's just hard because we have kids, so it's hard
Yeah.
for us to both be in something
Mhm.
together. But if you want to see that, let us know. Encourage us, and maybe that'll encourage us to get a babysitter or something.
Yeah.
But yeah. So we mostly do 5e stuff, not so much like Tal'Dorei stuff. Though I've been on a Critical Role kick lately, ever since I made a theory video about Imogen from Campaign 3 that got a lot of people talking and they thought it was interesting, and that was fun for me. It's the biggest video I've ever made so far. um, it's kind of petered out, so I guess YouTube
For the
algorithm rang its eye, but if you want to go check that out, that's a fun one.
Yep, you can find all of links to Flute Sloots all down in the description. Quick shout out to other friends of our channels. Fry Minis is doing a full coverage of Call of the Netherdeep, so go check him out and support. He's also doing a giveaway, and so go ahead and get into that. I believe the winner will get a $50 gift card from Miniature Market. So yep, go check him out and go support him. And then also I saw Claire Corner was in here. Wanted to remind people again too. He had a video out today that discussed character ideas for Call of the Netherdeep. So go, I think he like anywhere from like 10 to 20 character ideas he had on there. He had quite a bit. So definitely go check him out, support his channel. And again, yeah, until next time, guys, you guys take care and have a good one. See you next week.
So yeah.